Good morning. My name is Melanie Bresnan. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the temporary music coordinator here at FUN. Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing number 388 in our gray hymnal, Dona Nobis Pacem. This is traditionally around, but I don't think there's enough of us for me to inflict that upon you. So we're going to sing it through 3 times, and if the Spirit moves you to sing it as a round, you're on your own, but I encourage it. Beautiful. That was a wonderful choose your own adventure round. I should have known in Nashville you guys would nail it. Well, it is also my pleasure to welcome you to worship here this morning. Again, my name is Melanie Bresnan, and my pronouns are she, her. On Sunday mornings, we bring our whole selves, our many names for the divine. Oh, sorry, you may be seated. I don't normally do all of these things at once. My apologies. Thank you, Gail. On Sunday mornings, we bring our whole selves, our many names for the divine, our diverse spiritual paths, and join together in worship. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not share a common creed, but covenant together to affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We are a welcoming congregation, and we deepen our relationships as we serve our congregation's mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values. Together, guided by reason and inspired by love, we celebrate diversity, confront oppression, and promote environmental and social justice. I would like to extend a special welcome to anyone who might be visiting us for the first time. Whoever you are, whatever brought you here today, wherever you are in your journey, you are welcome here. If you would like to learn more about Unitarian Universalism or how to become involved in the life of this congregation, you can reach out to our office manager, Brangie Emrys. You can find her contact information on our website, firstuunash.org, where you can also learn about religious education, faith formation, and social justice activities, as well as ways to give. We have a few short announcements. First, save the date for our annual congregational meeting on June 12th, following the service at 11:15 a.m. Meeting materials will be posted on our website shortly. Second, the Mission Vision Task Force will be presenting the Provisional Mission Statement and Provisional Covenant. You can also review these on our website, where you can find other details and where to send your feedback. Third, there will be a community conversation for religious education on Sunday, June 5th, about the current and future state of programming for children and youth, including RE classes, OWL, and more. This will take place in the sanctuary immediately following the worship service, and we hope to provide an opportunity for folks to Zoom in. Finally, for details on these and all other announcements, please check out our Sunday bulletin and website at firstuunash.org. We're so glad you have joined us for worship today. We'll light our chalice with these words by Eric Walker Wickstrom, Why We're Here. Here today in this place and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way.
Good morning. My name is Josh Richardson. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm your worship arts technical coordinator, but this morning I'm representing my nonprofit, Brugmansia Ministries, where we prepare congregations for climate change and climate-induced migration. Our call to worship comes from Susan McGinn. From beyond the playful summer clouds, beyond the earth's thin blue line, from beyond the bright moon and the meteor showers, we hear the call to look and listen carefully. To turn away from a world that buys and sells happiness, to fully experience the luring whisper of our heart's truth. Why not today? Why not now? We are here together at home or in this evolving place, home in this ever-changing breath and body, home in this dewy morning, even as it reaches towards a high, hot noon. We hear the call from far beyond and deep within, and we do not hear it alone. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I am Marguerite Mills, your Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and my pronouns are she, her. This morning's story is called Buddha in the Garden by David Bouchard. The temple monks are wise and worthy. It is an honor to be a temple monk. They are considered holy and chosen. All of them are chosen. all but the garden boy. They often leave the temple. They're searching the world for enlightenment. All of them travel around the world but two: the garden boy and the old blind monk who day after day sits meditating at the temple gate. Years before, the garden boy had appeared at the temple gate, a small, abandoned bundle. The monks found him lying next to a bare root peony. Now, the monks who found the boy cared for him reluctantly. Raising an infant was not their purpose. Still, the child survived, and over time he came to live by the rules and customs of his solitary keepers. But the boy was not allowed to think of enlightenment. The monks regarded the flower they had found lying next to him as a sign, and they made the boy their temple gardener. Now, care of the garden is an important responsibility. In the quiet, dark morning, the garden boy shuffles through the gates, weighted down with 2 large buckets of water. His eyes are on the ground. Then he hears the whisper of a man's voice. Startled and frightened, he searches in one direction and then the other. There is no one to be seen but the blind old monk who never speaks a word to anyone. The boy turns to leave when he hears the voice again. "Buddha is in the garden," says the voice. Quickly, the garden boy spins around. Yes, it was the old monk who had spoken. The boy answers, "But Master, I have tended the garden every day for 9 years, and I have never seen or heard Buddha. Perhaps only one who is worthy can see him? Perhaps the other monks when they come for vegetables." The old monk says nothing. He merely sits. The garden boy waits for a reply, but none comes, and after a short time he hurries into the garden. There he searches every corner. It takes him only a moment to realize that Buddha is not in the garden. He goes to his favorite resting spot under a flowering tree next to his peony. There he sits, legs crossed. He turns the palms of his hands toward heaven, closes his eyes, and begins dreaming. In his dream, he sees a young woman propped up against a crumbling stone wall. Her face is gaunt and her eyes hollow. She hovers over a covered object, protecting it. Her pale, frail arms are wrapped tightly around her small package. The boy opens his eyes to the sight of a small, starving kitten. He's surprised. Animals are rarely seen in the temple. The kitten is so thin that its ribs show through its ragged coat. The boy picks up the kitten and feeds it, caring for it as the monks had cared for him. Weeks later, while passing through the gate again, the garden boy hears the old monk speak a second time. "Buddha is in the garden," says the monk. The boy quickly sits facing him. "The last time you said that, Master, I went and I looked for him. I found nothing but a small, starving kitten. Master, where should I look? In what form will I find Buddha?" After a few silent minutes, sensing that an answer will not come, the boy goes to his favorite resting spot. With the kitten curled up on his robe, he thinks about the old man's words. Again, he dreams of the young woman. She is still near a crumbling wall, but this time she's crouched over, coughing feverishly, while her small bundle lies nestled on the ground at her feet. A heavy, lonely feeling overcomes the boy. He hears a slight rustle and opens his eyes. Next to his flower, he finds a small bird trying to fly, but failing. Its wing is broken. The boy picks up the bird, carries it to his room, and nurses it back to health. Over the next few weeks, the garden boy spends part of each day sitting near the old monk. Hour after hour, he asks questions about life. He describes the beauty of his garden and of his peony. He describes every detail of his dreams, the beautiful woman, her hunger, her illness, and the bundle that consumes her so. It is during one of these many visits that the old monk speaks again. As the boy relates a long story about a bee that appears out of nowhere to hover in the garden, the old man interrupts. "You have seen hunger and illness, boy. These are the first two signs. You will soon discover the third, and then you will find the enlightenment we are all seeking." Sensing this is a sign he might again see the mysterious woman, the boy runs into the garden. But as he approaches his special place, he stops, frozen. He stares at his beautiful peony. It is wilted, hanging lifeless from its stem. The boy is not surprised by this death. Each year the flower dies and is reborn, but by the strange timing of this event. Quietly, the boy sits, closes his eyes, and waits. It is not long before the dream woman reappears. In her smile, the boy recognizes his own. For the first time, the woman turns and looks at him. Her voice is his voice, soft, kind, caring. "I have longed to see you, my son. I have been here with you all these years, but now I must leave. You know hunger, and you've seen illness. You also know that your flower has died and that it will live again. You now understand how we came to be apart. This is the third sign. It is the key to enlightenment." Smiling tenderly, the dream woman walks toward her son and takes him in her arms. As he sinks into his mother's embrace, the garden boy closes his eyes tight. He vows that nothing on earth or in heaven will ever take him from this place and this peace. A few days later, 7 monks return from their search for enlightenment in far-off lands. As they approach the gate, they hear the old monk speak. "Buddha is in the garden," he says. The 7 monks hurry into the garden. Under the flowering tree, next to a dead peony, they discover the statue of a beautiful, young, smiling Buddha. His legs are crossed, his palms turned toward heaven, and his eyes are shut tight. There, silent before them, the 7 monks see what they have been seeking all their lives: peace and fulfillment. And on the smiling Buddha's lap, curled up as one, are a small, frail kitten and a tiny bird. And so ends the story. You may know that every Sunday we share our offering with an organization outside our walls that aligns with our values. Our Share the Plate partner for the month of May is Workers' Dignity, a worker center here in Nashville working for economic justice and dignity for all. And this is our last opportunity this month to give to their efforts. Offerings may be made by placing them in the offering bowls as they make their way through the sanctuary. And as always, donations may be made online at the link on the website, firstuunash.org. The offering is a sacrament of the Free Church, which is supported by the voluntary generosity of those who join with us. Your gifts, like your presence among us, are received with deep gratitude. Thank you so much, Holling. When we come to worship, we are invited to bring our whole selves, including struggles and difficulties, joys and celebrations, knowing that whatever we bring, it will be held in community. As always, you can reach out to your lay ministers for support anytime during the week. Their contact information is on the website. I invite us first into a time of silent reflection, a time to listen to what is in your heart and on your mind. The sound of the bell will bring your attention back to the room. And then I will invite you to speak the name or names of people you are holding in tender care today. The name you speak may be your own. If you are on Zoom, you may type names into the chat and they will be spoken aloud into the sanctuary by someone here. Let us enter a time of shared silence. let us lift up the names of those we want to hold in our warm embrace. Let us hold the names spoken and those unspoken with care in our hearts. Let us also remember the people of Uvalde and Buffalo and George Floyd, who died 2 years ago this past week. I invite us into a time of prayer with words from Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker. In the midst of a world marked by tragedy and beauty, there must be those who bear witness against unnecessary destruction and who, with faith, rise and lead in freedom, with grace and power. There must be those who speak honestly and do not avoid seeing what must be seen of sorrow and outrage, of tenderness and wonder. There must be those whose grief troubles the water while their voices sing and speak refreshed worlds. There must be those whose exuberance rises with lovely energy that articulates earth's joys. There must be those who are restless for respectful and loving companionship among human beings, whose presence invites people to be themselves without fear. There must be those who gather with the congregation of remembrance and compassion and draw water from old wells and walk the simple path of love for neighbor. And there must be communities of people who seek to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God, who call on the strength of soul force to heal, transform, and bless life. There must be religious witness. May it be so. May we make it so.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our middle hymn, number 1047, in our teal hymnal, Nada te turbe. We'll sing it through once in Spanish and then again in English.
Dios tiene, nada le falta.
be seated.
Peace be with you. I want to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the land the United States government calls Nashville, Tennessee, but it's also the ancestral homeland of the Yuki, the Shawnee, and the Cherokee peoples prior to the arrival of European settlers. Today, I'm going to be drawing from my Christian background in an attempt to have a genuine interfaith conversation. Instead of a sermon, I'm going to be giving a meditation. This is an invitation for genuine dialogue and a conversation, so I'm not telling you what to believe, but we are in conversation together. I'll be working off of a text from John. It's where shortly after Jesus was crucified and then comes in resurrection. John chapter 20, verse 19 through 23. When it was evening on the day of the first day of the week, and the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Judean leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his scars in his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I also send you." When he had said this, he breathed upon them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." So I understand this is a tricky text, and I'm going to be doing a traumatic-informed reading, or a post-traumatic, or a trauma-informed reading of this text, instead of a traditional understanding. But I'm going to start somewhere else. So each night, before we put our child to bed, my partner and I sing a hymn while laying Lydia down in her crib. We sing, "All will be well, and all will be well. All manner of things will be well." These words are the words imparted by Jesus to the great mystic Gillian of Norwich in one of her visions as she lived through bubonic plague in Europe. In hearing these words, I'm always keenly aware of the profound acknowledgement that the world we inhabit is not well on personal, organizational, political, and global scales. We're collectively living through interconnected and expansive levels of suffering and trauma. We're still in the midst of a pandemic that has taken the lives of over 6 million individuals, with millions more who are permanently disabled. Laws are being adopted to challenge the humanity of our trans siblings. We are witnessing the highest levels of inflation in the cost of food since 1979, with 10% of households in the United States unable to consistently provide enough food to feed everyone, while corporations are posting record profits. Housing prices are soaring because Wall Street banks are purchasing roughly 1/5 of all houses, driving gentrification and the cultural erasure of low-income neighborhoods. We are averaging more than one mass shooting per day in our country. In response to droughts and heat waves in the western United States, municipalities are rationing water to indigenous communities while continuing to supply water to golf courses. Climate change is foundationally changing weather patterns, where we're now facing the very real possibility of catastrophic and cascading ecosystem collapse, leading to the death of trillions of organisms, including humans, on scales we've never witnessed as a species. I wonder then, what does it mean to say, "All will be well"? All will be well, all manner of things will be well, amidst such strange suffering. If you're comfortable, please pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of your hearts be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. As I mentioned, our reading today could be interpreted in many ways. I'm going to present a trauma-informed reading of this text instead of a more conventional interpretation. Our story begins in a place of immense systemic violence, trauma, and fear. Jesus' followers are locked away, fearing for their lives. While it's not in the text, the Judean leaders would also have been afraid of violence from Rome, and honestly, the Roman officials would have been afraid of violence from Caesar. Caesar as well would have been afraid of infighting and violence as someone tries to take power of the throne. So the entire society is built and bound together on fear and violence. Now, within our reading, there are four major movements that happen that take a community from a place of fear and trauma to a place of movement and action. First, there's an initial calming and there's a greeting. Prior to Jesus' arrival, the followers are acting and processing the world from a place of fear. As a brief aside, when humans are afraid or traumatized, the amygdala in our brain shuts down our cerebral cortex, limiting our ability to concentrate, process new information, and make rational decisions. So not only are the followers afraid, but they're not fully able to reason, to process, to make decisions to the fullness of their being. They are limited and they are bound by their trauma. And it's in that moment of fear that Jesus miraculously appears and says, "Peace be with you." The statement, "Peace be with you," would have been a customary greeting, but biblical scholars like Raymond Brown have argued that instead of a greeting, this was much more of a reassuring command. It's "have peace, be at peace." So after there's this deep breath of peace and a calming, Jesus helps the disciples process their trauma. Jesus instructs them to recognize the trauma inflicted on his own body. For the disciples, this is a confrontation with what community organizer Edward Chambers calls the world as it is. The brutality of the Roman Empire and the horror of the state-sponsored execution are laid bare in Jesus' scars on his side, on his wrists, and all of the horrors of the crucifixion that have happened upon him. And the followers must process. And once they've processed this trauma, they're transformed into something new that they weren't before. Here, the gospel writer calls the images of Jesus bringing new life into the disciples. This is a direct reference to the book of Genesis, where God brings new life into soil to create humans, Adam from Adamah. Once the disciples have processed their trauma, they are something completely new. They are whole and complete people, just as the first human was whole, complete, and good. Finally, Jesus leaves his followers with a charge. The NRSV, which I read from, translates Jesus' statements in the context of sin, which I think is clouded by how sin has been used in the modern times. The word sin really is a descriptor for brokenness. So Jesus' statement is more aligned with the statement, if you work to heal brokenness, it will be healed. If you don't work to heal brokenness of this world, things will remain broken. It's not a condemnation of the brokenness, but acknowledgement of that brokenness and a command to make things whole. Today, our society and institutions are in a deep state of brokenness that continues cycles of violence and trauma, and we're constantly being confronted with a deep pain and profound cynicism that allows atrocity to become customary. In the words of Hannah Arendt, there's a banality to the exploitation and suffering in our society that we've accepted as conditions of living. But more than that, even our solutions that we think promote justice are so bound in our own trauma that they continue to perpetuate harm. Nowhere is this more evident than our relationship with the environment. Right now, it's estimated that humanity is on a trajectory to cause widespread ecological collapse within this decade. To ensure any semblance of reasonable life for our children, we need to completely change how we understand our lives. Yet most of the solutions that are presented to us will cause incredible amounts of local environmental degradation in the form of mining, while not actually solving our underlying problems. We are being asked to accept two simple, unjust fates. We are told that we either rapidly decarbonize through technological means, which include supporting industries that are built on the destruction of marginalized communities, economic exploitation, and literal child slavery, or we must sit and idly by and watch the world burn. To be perfectly clear, there's no environmental justice in either of those solutions. But these conditions aren't set. We don't have to accept the narratives and solutions presented us by techno-corporatist elites and self-interested politicians. It's only our trauma and our fear that keep us from addressing the major challenges of our time in ways that stop cycles of trauma and violence. We are in a great moment of disruption socially, politically, environmentally. We're living in a new age where the long-held beliefs and systems are faltering and they're breaking. Our basic assumptions about how the world worked no longer apply to how things are moving. And that is traumatic, but it also provides us with a great opportunity to bring about justice in life in ways that have not been seen in generations in this country. The disruptions are the weight of exploitation folding in upon itself from short-sighted greed and bloat. And it's in that breaking that we can bring forth something transformational and new. But somehow, to do that, we're going to have to process a whole lot of trauma. And for that, we're going to need to be resilient. In this strange time, being resilient means living in the liminal space between the world as it is and the world as it should be. It's holding the immense suffering of this life and having the depth to be able to say, we can make something better. We know there is such immense pain and suffering caused by the machines of injustice, but we also know there are other possibilities that do not perpetuate harm. As we work to become resilient, we can learn to have what eco-theologian Cynthia Molibita calls critical mystical vision. It's the ability to process and see what's going on in the world while also seeing life-giving and viable alternatives. It is understanding that there's a sacred spirit of life pushing us towards an existence where there's abundant life for all creation and working alongside that spirit. And ultimately, knowing in our bones that there will be justice, mercy, and all will be well. Each Sunday for the past 8 months, I've had the joy of witnessing this faith community come together to provide a safe space and sanctuary for folks dealing with religious, economic, and political trauma. I've also had the immense joy of working alongside many of your leaders who care deeply for this community and know the true worth and value of a place like this when life is so unwell. And I can see ways in which this community can help transform Nashville into a place of justice and healing instead of a place that it continues to slip into oppression, hopelessness, and rigidity. So how can we say all will be well? All will be well because with the spirit of life, we have the ability to make it well. It's just a matter of seeing that we have the ability to do so and the willingness to truly act. And there's nothing better that any of us could do with our lives than to make things well. We need to address our traumas, unlock our doors, go into a dangerous world. We will need to have the courage to see what the world can be, and if we work towards making brokenness whole within ourselves and our institutions. But in the end, all will be well. All will be well. All manner of things will be well. May it be so.
Our closing hymn today is not in our hymnal. It's from the Taizé tradition, as have been all of the hymns we've sung so far. It will be displayed on the screen behind me, and I'll walk y'all through it with my hands too, so no need to read music. I'll also sing it through once with Holling. We're going to sing the first ending until it feels right to end. The second ending is what in Nashville we would call a tag. All of the words are, all will be well, and all will be well. All manner of things will be well. Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing, all will be well. All will be well. Please remain standing for our chalice extinguishing, the words for which are in the back of our gray hymnal and are written by Elizabeth Zell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
The world is changed and is always changing, as we are changed and are always changing. As we end our sacred time together, may we bring forth change and new realities of hope and justice. Go in peace, go in love, and be well.